Hi there, Lori here, and this evening I want to paint one of my landscapes. So one of my go-tos and one of the earliest types of paintings that I learned to do in alcohol ink was landscapes. So landscapes in alcohol ink can be as detailed or as simple as you want, and so it's been a while since I've done a simple landscape, and I thought I would do another one. Thought that would be a little bit of fun. So I'm working on when you work with alcohol ink. And this is also, I want to tell you some of the basics that you need to know when working with alcohol ink. So when you're working with alcohol ink, you need to have a non-porous surface. Now, 10 years ago, I first started using alcohol inks and fell in love with the whole idea of painting with alcohol inks. And but I was very discouraged, and the reason was I thought I could use regular like watercolor, mixed media paper, and pull out the inks and get them to move. Well, that's just not how they work. They need to be able to move on the surface, and in order for that to happen, you need to work with a non-porous surface. So regular paper like that will absorb the ink. You need a paper that the ink will, or a surface the ink will move on. So you can use a glazed tile works great. Anything that is non-porous. Now, the papers that we use that are non-porous, we first started out using Yupo years ago, but now there are several other providers. Graphics is a big one. Graphics makes something called Durabrite. They also have something called Duralar. Duralar is a more translucent medium. Durabrite is a lot like what you see on my paper, on my board here. And then there's also Nara. Nara is out of India, and they make a really good paper. The beauty of the Nara and the Durabrite is that when you're lifting the ink, if you need to lift to white, you can actually do those with those substrates. Yupo stains a little bit, and it's a little harder to do that. There are other surfaces. Terra Slate is another one that I use that work pretty good. It does stain a little bit like Yupo. But what I'm using here today, and I like to use this when I do these quick fun projects, is actually just photo paper, but it's not just any photo paper. This is Amazon Basics. The other photo paper that works really well is Kirkland brand, that's put out, or it used to be put out by Costco. That brand of paper, but you don't work on the side of the paper that's glossy, because if you do, the inks are going to soak in and they're not going to move. You work on the back side of that paper. The back side of that photo paper is made of the same sort of material that the Yupo, the graphics, and all. It's a polyethylene, almost plastic-like material, and it works really well. So I like to use the Amazon Basics because it's the least expensive option available, and I use that for my practice work, or if I'm just going to do quick little paintings. And when I know that I have something with a lot more strategy in place and stuff, I'll pull out my Nara or my graphics or Yupo. I do love those substrates, but just wanted to point out today I'm working on the back side of this Amazon Basics photo paper. So the thing about it is it kind of rolls a little bit, and so I taped it down to a piece of cardboard to work with. Okay, so I'm going to jump right in. And I am going to start off, I'm just going to put a little bit of my blue. I'm just going to sprinkle some out here. And then I'm going to come in here with a little bit of my wild plum. Okay. And then some of the sunshine yellow. And what I like to do, and another good reason of taping it down into a board, is you can actually put it down on the paper. But I'm actually going to take a little bit of blending solution and put the blending solution on here. And this is going to help it flow a little bit better. So you can see it reacting to the blending solution. So this blending solution looks like this. It's the Tim Holtz blending solution. I like it. I've used it for many years. I put it in a little tiny bottle with a little nozzle so that I can control the flow of it out a little bit. So you can see what's happening here on my paper is the inks are already doing their own thing, and they do a lot of the work for me. But what I'm going to do is, and I picked this up. I remember to use this type of brush. This is something that Corinne did in a video that she did on the Alcohol Ink Art Community channel. So if you want to learn alcohol inks, go check out the Alcohol Ink Art Community channel, because that's a great place to learn. There's hundreds of videos there on all sorts of things, and some are pretty in-depth instruction on painting with alcohol ink. So go check that out. And I'm just going to move this around a little bit. I have a lot on here. I might pick some of this up. just to have a little more control. So I always work with a lot of paper towels, and that just helps me if I need to do something like this, like do a little pickup, I can do that. So I've got just a little bit too much ink down, and so I'm picking a little bit of that up with it. And you can see that it's still very fluid. And I'm going to take this watercolor brush that has alcohol in it. It's got isopropyl alcohol, and I'm just going to just blend this around, put it out on the paper like this, rocking back and forth. You can see it will flow. It just really creates a beautiful blend here. And two things. So I get asked a question a lot of times: what's the difference between blending solution and isopropyl alcohol? Well, they both are used for a lot of different things. Now you can use the isopropyl alcohol to move things around, and that's sort of what it does. Blending solution kind of mixes things together a little bit better, like blend the colors. And it's a little thicker and long, and it doesn't dry as quickly, so you can have a little bit longer work time. And then the alcohol itself, which is what is in here, kind of displaces the inks a little bit. I'm going to actually put a little bit of blue down here so we can get some green. So mixing the colors, so blue, mixing right in the path, right on the painting itself. So if I mix this blue in with this yellow down here, I'm going to get some nice green. The other thing I like to pay attention to when I do these is the law of thirds. So I want my sort of horizon to be like 1/3 below on the page. So that's just kind of a good rule of thumb if you're creating landscapes. So I'm just pulling this in. I can maneuver this ink around any way I want. One of the other tools that I use a lot, and this is if you're getting started, really fun to play with. You can just move things around, manipulate where things go a little bit, clean off on a paper towel. Always work on a paper towel. And I'm just going to pull this down and see what kind of interesting results. Now I'm going to let that do its thing for a little while here and see what happens. This can create some little interesting landscape effects. So let's leave that down, and I'll be back in just a second. Okay, I'm back a little bit. I kind of want to add some more blue at top, and there's no rules to this. I can do that if I want to. I love sailboat blue, one of my favorite alcohol ink colors. You ask me any given day, it's a different one because I have so many favorites. But today, for the sky, it's sailboat blue. Now, the less you manipulate the inks, the smoother it's actually going to be. If you just put the stuff down and just let it rock, it'll do some interesting things as well. So you might be looking to say, "Oh, it already looks pretty cool." Well, yeah, that's the way it works. You can create some really neat looking paintings. I like to keep manipulating sometimes when it's wet because I just can't leave things alone, but I'm creating some little mountains back here. Isn't that pretty? The other thing is I didn't necessarily intend to make a mountain scene, but that's kind of what's coming out. So you just kind of have to go with that too and not get too upset if things don't go exactly the way you want them to. There we go. So let's bring that sky over here a little bit. There we go. That's pretty. A little bit more yellow and a tad of blue. This coffee stir is a really good shaping tool to like manipulate the landscape for you. So much fun to use. And again, I haven't done one of these videos in a long time, so I figured, what the heck, why not do another one that's a little bit more updated, a lot more, like some of the products that I mentioned earlier weren't available when I did the first one, which has been years ago. Alright, I'm just going to leave that be, and then I can come in and maybe I'll paint a little tree or something like that in there, just to give it a little bit extra. I mean, that's pretty enough as it is, but I just want to show you a little bit more of what's possible and how you work with it after this. Now typically I would want my sky to be just a little bit lighter when I'm going to do trees, but I'm not going to worry about that right now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a little lake right here, because I like doing that, and then some trees. So what I'm going to do the lake is actually going to pull out a palette. This is a dirty palette. What happens is you can see that there's some colors in the palette that are dirty. And if I add a little drop of alcohol, that will reactivate, and those inks will reactivate and become paint again. But what I like to do is, I want to stick with the same blues this time. So I'm going to take my sailboat blue, and I'm dropping it in right on top of that teal color, but I'm not worried about it. That could actually work to my advantage. So what I'm doing is just kind of mixing that up, and I got a little bit on a round brush here, and I just want to come in here. So when I'm painting like a lake here, I just want to go horizontal with it, because you don't want to, that's just the natural way it goes. And the more you swoosh back and forth, you can look like there's ripples in the water. I can come back in with just a brush with some alcohol on it and lift out a little bit. So I think I'm going to leave it like that. It's going to make I'll put a moon or something up here, but I'm going to draw in my tree first. I'm going to make a big tree that goes in the foreground here. So when I go to lift out my tree, I want to, there's a number of ways. I can use a brush that's very damp with alcohol. And I do that a lot of the time. But this time I'm actually going to use a blender pen. So let me locate my blender pen here. Okay. This one is a Arteza brand one. It's got two sides. One side's a wide nib. One side's a very fine point. So what I do with this is I can actually come up and draw, and then I clean my tip off. And when I'm drawing into this, I'm actually lifting out the alcohol ink. So in this blender pen, it's a little bit of solution that includes alcohol, and it allows me to blend out and lift out. So I'm just going to rough in my tree. Let's see. It's going to go over here too. And I'm just kind of roughing it in right now. Let's see. We want it to go over the waterscape a little bit, maybe. And then we can go over here. Go up. Trees don't ever grow straight. So now that I have that, I can actually come in with a wider tip and lift out a little bit more. And just to show you how it works with a brush, I'll take a brush with a fine tip. Grab one. Here's a brush with well, that's not fine enough tip. You need a really pretty fine tip brush. Or, sometimes what I do is I'll use one of my filbert brushes, which is like this. And the filbert brush, you can turn it sideways and lift it. So I'll show you how that works. So I like to make sure my brush is wet but only damp. And then you come in here and you can just like lift out the paint with the brush. And when I'm working small like this, I'd like to use a thin tip like this one. So let's do that. And you can get some pretty fine details lifted out. So all I'm doing is lifting. And the way limbs work is they at the base or where they come out the trunk of the tree, they are a little bit fatter, and as they go towards the edges, they are a lot thinner, and they are also a lot more of them. So you can come in here and just kind of lift out. There we go. Let's have a branch that comes up here, and you just keep playing around with this till you have that tree looking just like kind of how you want it to look. I'm not going to get too exact with this one for the sake of the video. I could get very specific with it, but I just want to demonstrate this, and then we're going to actually put some leaves on it really quick. All right. Okay, so one of my favorite ways to do leaves is to use, there's several ways. There's a couple of tools that you can get every day. So this is, the first one is felt. And you've seen the felt applicators that are round, and they also have like little felts and Velcro. Well, I made my own. I have these blocks that I got at the dollar store and pieces of felt. This actually a newer block. This is the one I've used for 10 years. And so what you do is you take that, and you can start off putting just a couple of dabs of blending solution. So I'm just going to put a couple little drops of blending solution in there. And then I tap it off on my paper towel because you don't want it super wet, because if you have it super wet when you touch the surface, you're going to have a mess. So this I'm just going to tap in there, and you're going to see what happens is these little leaves are going to start to appear. And all I'm doing is tapping. I'm letting the alcohol or blending solution do all the work for me. So I'm starting off with just blending solution, and that's going to lift out. There we go. Then I can take a few dabs of, let's start with wild plum. Put a couple of dabs of wild plum on, and then tap that in. That puts a nice pretty bright color leaf. Now this isn't a realistic painting, okay? So with alcohol inks, we take our little liberties with our colors, and we like to use them as much as possible. But you see this fun little tree here. If you want to get really exact, you know, have a shadow going on over here a little bit. So I can use I have a little bit of black in my weld palette here, or it's a dark green or something, gray or something. But I can just come in here and just kind of touch in there a little bit. So I've done a little, that you can get super realistic, or you don't really have to worry about it. It depends on what you want to do. These are whimsical little paintings, so you know you don't have to get deep. You don't have to get very involved in all the specific details. The other thing that you can do is you can come in with an alcohol ink marker and add detail as well. And sometimes I do that on the trunk. So this is a brown marker, so I can come in here and just kind of add this brown in here. I could paint this in too if I wanted. Fine. Then I can come over here too and make it look like there's some trees in the background. That's too light for that. You got to have a dark color for that. A lot of times when I'm doing the background trees like that and that are in a silhouette, I will use a Sharpie, and this is one of my favorite Sharpies to use. This is a black Sharpie. It's got two tips. It's got a fine tip, and it's got an ultra fine tip. For the ultra fine tip, allows you to add some specific detail. And let's see, I think that one may be a little dried up. See if this one's better. I always have several of these. Yeah. So this is a finer tip one, and this one is just a fine tip. So I'm going to take this, and then right back here, I'm just going to put some squigglies back there to make it look like there's something's going on. You do not have to be precise by any means. These are silhouetted against the background. So, and you can just kind of tap these in all around. And then on this tree, so if the light's coming here, you can make this side of the tree a little darker. So you can actually come in here and put some of these shadows in there. And then maybe a little here. And then I come in with a little brush and soften that up a little bit. This is just a damp brush. I'm just kind of move that. So Sharpies have alcohol ink in them. So the ink that you find in the Sharpies is alcohol ink. I don't know if you know that or not, but just in case you didn't, that's why you can sort of reactivate. Some people actually like to take a Sharpie and scribble on the paper and then take alcohol to it and do some really good, whimsical, fun, abstracty things with that. Give that a try. That's fun. Okay, that's good enough. I end up also coming back sometimes and just kind of lifting out in the foreground a little bit. So it's just a little bit lighter that shows the lights hitting the edge of the tree. Okay. Another thing that I like to do is take one of my brushes. I could take this, let me just clean it off a little bit. This water brush, and clean it off on my paper towel until it's running a little clearer. There we go. All right, and so I can come back in here and just tap in. What this will do is add texture and make maybe look like some rocks or something in the landscape. Maybe you could do it on the edge of the water. Just tap in, and then the more you tap, the more detail you sort of get, which is kind of fun. And you just keep tapping until you get the detail that you want in there. You can come in here and be a little extra too, and sometimes I'll do this with my my Sharpie. Is I'll come in and I'll add some, that's the wrong one. Add some little tree limbs in here to make it look a little bit more, realistic. Have some limbs coming up here. Add in little details. It's always fun. Okay, so this is definitely not a perfect painting, but it's still kind of cute. I am going to now put. I'm ready to put the final details on, and I'm going to actually put a little moon in there and a little bird in the skyline. So the way I'm going to do that is I have my isopropyl alcohol here in a little container, and I'm going to take one of my brushes. I usually like to use one of the larger round brushes. This is number 5, and it's got by sailboat blue in there. So let me clean it off a little bit. It's okay because it's going into the sky, but you want to also kind of make sure you don't have too much on it. But then you just figure out where you want it, and you just put one single drop and you let it bloom. And sometimes I'll come back and do an extra drop right in the middle, but you just let that bloom. And then you can take a paper towel and go down like that. And then you can just lift around. And so this particular paper will lift to white. So that's perfect. So we got a little moon coming in. That's just perfect because we got the moonlight coming on the water. Right here. And last thing, let's put a couple of birds in the sky. Again, I grabbed the wrong Sharpie. And there we go. And it's bothering me that this moon's not round, so I'm going to go ahead and try to round it out a little bit while my brush is damp. There we go. Yeah, I'm happy with that. I could come back in and work in the trees and stuff, but you get the picture. Go ahead and play around. And if you like working with alcohol ink and you haven't joined the alcohol ink art community, it's a free Facebook group. And there is a lot of stuff that goes on there. Plus, we have the YouTube channel and the website. So the YouTube channel, all you have to do is go Alcohol Ink Art Community. And finally, if you really want to learn everything, me and Cheryl Williams put together a book along with a lot of the contributors from the Alcohol Ink Art Community. And we put together a book full of projects called Creating Art with Alcohol Ink. You can get it on Amazon, or you can reach out to me and I can get you a copy of it. But it's a great reference book. We poured everything that we know over the 10 years of creating with alcohol ink into that book. And it's got a lot of really good information and all the basics, like understanding the color theory, understanding values, and all of that in painting. So it's really a great way to learn alcohol ink. And it also teaches you that alcohol ink can be a gateway medium to working with other mediums like watercolor and acrylic, oil, and other art mediums. It's a great way to learn to even become an artist.